From the Bankfin Touring Cars series is proudly brought to you by Bankfin, the right deal for you. After the carnage of round 17, there was a heck of a lot of work to be done before round 18, which was delayed to give teams much needed extra time to sort out one or two bits of bodywork. Dos Santos' Centra looked quite a mess, but Nick Jooste worked miracles to get the car ready. Of all four of the teams involved in that four-man pile-up, BMW's men had the least work to do. But then it didn't look like it. And then the Sasol Beamer team found a very novel way to panel beat the door of Briggs's car. There you go, think I got it that time. Friday's qualifying had been tame by comparison, but it wasn't plain sailing for some. Bashki would start from the back after blowing another motor, while Dos Santos' effort was thwarted by a broken power steering belt. Brian Martin was third fastest of the privateers and showed Browell the way around the track. Second fastest was Besaidnout in the Nissan Engine Exchange Centra. And the fastest privateer was Peters, this despite a gearbox failure late in the session. Van der Linde lined up at the head of the second row after setting the third fastest time behind this man, Chris Aberdeen, who is something of a Killarney specialist, and the crowds love him for it.
Yeah, we've been working hard on the car, found a bit more power, had a very good lap. We were expecting, I think, for the first qualifying to be a lot close to the front, but didn't pull it off. But the second qualifying, a little bit lucky at the end with the oil on the track, so a lot of guys didn't put up their best times. But I'm very happy. We're on the front row and the car's very good over race distance. So I think tomorrow we're in with a good shout.
Pole position went to champion-elect Janelle de Villiers in the BP Nissan Primera.
The pole position definitely does help on this track, especially because it's quite difficult to pass. And it's a great bonus to be on pole, but I think it's still going to be a very hard race. The other guys are close, very close up there. I think we've got to plan our strategy very carefully and see how we can go in the race. But we're looking good. If you're on pole, you always got an advantage. So hopefully we can dictate things from there if we can.
Racing doesn't come much closer than the Bankfin Touring Car series. Behind de Villiers, no less than 6 cars were covered by less than a second, which is close by anyone's standards. Head down the 180-degree continental corner, and Briggs goes for the outside option. It's a tight fit, and Van der Linde is following de Villiers through on the inside line, which is probably the better option. Briggs gets onto the curb, but he's still well placed for the following right-hander. Into Engine Oval, and the two BMWs are still disputing third place. It's moments like this that gives team managers more grey hairs than what they've already got. Moss and Taylor are right behind the BMs, and there's nothing between this quartet. On board with Moss as he hounds Briggs on the run to Shull. This is where they collided in the previous race. Now Van der Linde is ahead of the Audi as Taylor sweeps around the outside. There's a bit of touch there, but they keep control, and it's hard work in a Bankfin Touring Car race, and certainly not for the faint-hearted. This series of sweeps at Killarney is what really sorts out the men from the boys. Looking back from the de Villiers car as they round the double apex say-back sweep, probably the most important corner at Killarney. Get it right and your speed down the long but slightly kinked straight is good, but get it wrong and you've lost a couple of positions in the blink of an eye. Next up is Vodacom Hip, and depending on the gearing, it's hard on the brakes and down to either first or second. A feature of this corner is that it's banked. Consequently, it's much faster than what it looks. A flat-out left-hand sweep before the pits is a lot more difficult than it looks, and that is where Ian Schechter and Hannes Kobler had their horrendous accident almost 10 years ago. One lap down, and already de Villiers has broken away from his pursuers, led by Aberdeen, then Briggs, Van der Linde. And that's Duncan Foss tossing his Nissan at the scenery. He'd qualified a lowly 6th after a misfire hampered his progress, and he's obviously trying a tad too hard to make up some ground. Fortunately, he didn't bury that in the gravel trap and didn't stall, so he's able to rejoin, but a long way back. As the pack heads around the back end of the track, the two Sasol Beamers seem to have shaken off their engine Audis and have got their heads down to chase second-placed Aberdeen. We're riding with Mr. Van der Linde. Now that his second place in the championship is secure, will he ride shotgun for Briggs? Everyone was asking. Briggs hasn't had a great season by his own great standards. open again, and Briggs has a quick look at the inside line but decides that discretion is the better part of valor. Aberdeen is under pressure though, and he locked up his brakes quite a lot, which won't do his tyres any good. Back up now through the gearbox, and another lap is almost over. The order then, after just a handful of laps: De Villiers, Aberdeen, Briggs and Van der Linde. Then it's Taylor and Moss fighting it out for fifth. Marco de Santos leads the privateer battle from Brian Martin, Besaidnout, Peters and Wambashki. We're with Mark Peters and the Dugsby Modems BMW as he chases Besaidnout, who locks up a bit, while Garth Wambashki also gets his Toyota a little out of shape. After 4 laps, it's very much as it was earlier. De Villiers looks to be in complete control, but Aberdeen is under enormous pressure from the BMWs, and he's certainly starting to look a little ragged. Those tyres have paid the price. Through the left-hander now and past the pits, and Briggs eases the Sassel BMW out of the slipstream to move alongside the Audi to set himself up to take the outside line around Continental. If he manages to stay there, the Audi will be in a good position at the next corner. And a little bit of contact there, but Briggs does very well to keep that on the black stuff. Aberdeen isn't giving him any room and more contact, but Briggs does very well. That was a typical 50-50 racing incident. Now Van der Linde says thank you very much and moves up 2 places. He's second, but can he do anything about catching up flying De Villiers? Briggs also gets past the Audi, but Aberdeen was a gentleman. He could so easily have come off the brakes and turned the BM right around. He might have just lost 2 places, but he hasn't given up the fight yet. Just look at how quickly Van der Linde has pulled away from them. When racing is this competitive, one mistake, no matter how small, can be very costly in terms of track position. Through the Saybat sweep with Aberdeen, and you can see how stiffly sprung a Bankfin Touring Car really is. Now it's flat out, foot pedal to the metal down the straight, and a good slipstream is worth up to 20 k's per hour. Linde just doesn't seem to be making any headway on the Nissan's lead, and that BP Nissan, piloted by Janelle De Villiers, is flying. Aberdeen is too late on the brakes and slides right off into the weeds. That's a costly error, but at least it gives Motorpix photographer Colin Watling a rare chance of a close-up photograph. Back out after some rallying and back into the fray. Martin is driving the race of his life and is ahead of Peters, Besaidnout and Wambashki. Behind them, it's Aberdeen and Voss. Then privateers Van Rensburg and Brouwel. But from the front, the order is still De Villiers, followed by Van der Linde and Briggs, who has closed right up on his teammate. And they, in turn, were followed by NJ and Audi teammates Anthony Taylor and Terry Moss. The closely fought privateer battle ended in tears. It was always going to be, as Aberdeen picks his way through the debris and Besaidnout's stranded car. Going into the second half of the race, and it's difficult to believe that it's barely 2 years since De Villiers won his first touring car race, but since then he's won an incredible 20 out of the last 37. Voss has now caught up to Peters and Martin, the 2 survivors of the quartet that was fighting for second in the privateers race. Either they haven't seen him or they don't actually care much for a factory driver coming through the field after making a mistake. They probably concentrating on their own battle and aren't aware that he's behind them, but he doesn't seem to have the speed to pass either of them. Oh, that was really close, but at least now he has the inside line for Engine Oval. Still, the Nissan hasn't got the legs to get past Peters in the Dugsbury Modems. It wouldn't be surprising if he or the car was suffering the effects of that huge impact with the wall in the earlier race. Peters waves him past, and he takes the opportunity to dive inside Martin at the very same time. Fast and clever racing. Martin now has the benefit of that Nissan slipstream and uses it to good effect as he opens up a bit of breathing space over Peters in the BMW. This is what the other drivers would call real cheek. Martin, a mere privateer, has the audacity to dare outbrake a factory driver. Surely Voss has got some kind of problem with that BP Nissan Primera. Neck and neck now past the Fitz, and Voss ever so slowly inches ahead as Peters closes right up again. Fascinating racing, and it certainly is turning out to be a tough weekend for young Mr. Voss. Why? Because there he goes, and takes his second rallying audition in round 18. Second place was just starting to slip away. 2.5 laps left, and Van der Linde has closed the gap to De Villiers. We can't imagine De Villiers relaxing his pace with just 2 laps still to run. Briggs is third, and his mirrors are full of Audis. Terry Moss is now ahead of Anthony Taylor, and the two are having a very good clean fight in the 2 engine Audis. Van der Linde spun away his chances. It looked as though he carried too much speed into Scholl and lost grip on the rear. A very rare mistake from him. The Audis of Taylor and Moss are still playing a game of cat and mouse with each other, but we're pretty sure the Audi team will ask Taylor to let Moss through before the end. After all, Taylor is very much the junior member, and Moss is ahead on points. And here's that replay of Van der Linde going off. It's as though the back stepped out as he started turning into the corner, which would suggest a brake problem rather than driver error this time. Now, without any threat, De Villiers starts his last lap. There's just 3.2 kilometers between him and win number 21, which will bring Nissan's tally up to 28. Briggs is still well clear of the Audi fight, which is keeping the crowd on its feet. Positions have changed though. Now Moss is ahead of Taylor again, who won his first national championship race at the tender age of 16. That was in Formula GTI at Welcome way back in 1989. They may be teammates, but there's no love lost between the pair, and they have different driving styles indeed. Watch how Taylor adopts the slow end, fast out approach, while Moss is visibly later on the brakes going into the corners. Senior partner Terry Moss has been the most successful driver ever in the Audi camp, having notched up no less than 3 national championship titles in just 7 years. He recently returned from Belgium, where he won the touring car category at Zolder in an international 24-hour endurance race. Down now to Vodacom for the last time, and De Villiers is cruising towards another dominant win. He's the only works touring car driver who doesn't have a background in single-seaters. He rose to prominence through the ranks of Group N racing. Lights ablaze, and he takes the flag some 7 seconds ahead of Mr. Briggs. A very comfortable win indeed for the man in the BP Nissan colours. Moss kept ahead of Taylor, while De Santos paid his team back for the hard work by winning the Privateers Challenge with 5th place ahead of Van der Linde. It was smiles all around on the podium, especially from Briggs, who was absolutely delighted with 2nd place. And on the Privateers podium, De Santos scored a direct hit on Peters. 2 more wins have extended Nissan's points advantage in the Manufacturers' Championship, while the final rounds at AA Killarney will see either BMW or Audi take 2nd place.